Hello everyone, it's your host, your friend, your boy, Jet Black the one and only, here with another exciting video. And in this video, I am going to be reading the DC Universe Encyclopedia Entry for Mr. Terrific. We're not reading a Wikipedia article, we're not reading a fan-made wikia, this is the official DC Universe Encyclopedia. This isn't just a reading, it is a commentary track. So as I am reading through it, I will also be commenting on the article, giving you guys my thoughts so we can discuss the character together. I know a little bit about Mr. Terrific. I've read a little bit of his team book, The Terrifics, which is very similar to the Fantastic Four. It's essentially DC's equivalent to the Fantastic Four. I recently became interested in Mr. Terrific again when looking back at the events of Dark Knight's Metal and realizing that he has in his possession dark metal cards. If you don't know what dark metal cards are, definitely feel free to check out my video on dark metal cards on the channel. But keep in mind, in this video, I may occasionally mispronounce words. I'm reading through a lot of this stuff for the first time and rather quickly, so sometimes my mouth will get a little bit ahead of my brain and I'll start just gobbling stuff up. I'll normally in that situation go back and reread the thing that I messed up or correct myself. Also, I have some free-for-profit music playing in the background. This free-for-profit music will occasionally have ads, to which then I will sometimes stop reading in order to close out of ads or to mute the ads if they're unskippable. But without further ado, let's hop right in and start reading about your boy, Mr. Terrific. Mr. Terrific, one of the smartest men in the world, Michael Holt has used his genius and belief in fair play in several superhero teams, including his namesake, the Terrifics. Aliases: Terry Sloan and Michael Holt. First appearance of Terry Sloan, Mr. Terrific, was in Sensation Comics #1 in 1942. And the first appearance of Michael Holt, Mr. Terrific, was in The Spectre #54, June 1997. Team affiliation: Mr. Terrific has been a member of the Justice Society of America, the All-Star Squadron, Checkmate, the Terrifics, the Justice League, and the Black Lantern Corps. For the hero known as Mr. Terrific, the term fair play isn't just a corny old motto. It's a truth to live by. That just seemed like a good time to stop. I like the music transition. It led into an ad though. And to me, it made that line have weight. It's a truth to live by. During the Golden Age, genius millionaire Terry Sloan used his considerable intellects and combat skills to become a masked vigilante. Seeking to not only fight criminals, he wore the term fair play on his costume as a way of sending a message to impressionable youths to not take the easy way out and to always fight a fair game. He served as a member of the Justice Society of America before ultimately being killed by an old enemy. But it was his successor, Michael Holt, who truly took the name and legacy of Mr. Terrific to new heights years later. Much like Sloan had been decades before, Holt was a one-of-a-kind, an Olympic-level athlete with a genius intellect who was adept in a multitude of skills. But when he lost his wife, Paula, in a tragic accident, he saw no point in living anymore. Thanks to the interference of the Spectre, who told him about the life and legacy of Terry Sloan, Holt found a new lease on life and took on the mantle of Mr. Terrific, sporting the phrase fair play on his costume just as his predecessor did. The second Mr. Terrific became a member of the Justice Society and later the Justice League, and the supergroup known as the Terrifics. He is considered the third smartest man in the world, right behind Lex Luthor and Batman. So real quick, I want to comment on what we've read so far. One thing that I do want to say, the Spectre is actually the Spectre is like the embodiment of the wrath of God, and essentially the Spectre is sent on missions by God in order to do God's will. God in the DC universe, like Christian God in the DC universe, is called the Presence. And for the Spectre to come up to Michael Holt as he's contemplating suicide and to tell him about like the legacy of Terry Sloan, and for that to then inspire Mr. Terrific in order to like become a superhero and to like live up to the legacy of Terry Sloan, implies like some kind of like divine plan, cosmic reasoning behind like why he's Mr. Terrific, which seems to like elevate his importance in the multiverse, because it's like God saying, oh, he matters actually, he matters a lot, don't let him die, like he's needed for the divine plan. That's like a whole thing. I read the New 52 run of Phantom Stranger recently, and Phantom Stranger is like another representation of like God's will. But this is pretty wild. I didn't expect the Spectre to be his origin. It makes sense though. Like the Spectre and Phantom Stranger more or less, at least in their modern incarnations, exist to kind of be origin stories for other people. A lot of the Phantom Stranger stuff was literally like he betrays someone, but his betrayal leads to their origin and them becoming something greater and like helping the world. So this is already a very interesting turn for Mr. Terrific. I didn't know that. I also think it's really interesting that he wasn't a guy who was like trying to become a superhero. And he doesn't have any like special powers or anything. He's just like an exceptional person. He's like a normal guy. But when he would have just like killed himself, like when he would have just kind of died or fallen into a deep depression, they don't necessarily say he's going to commit suicide, but it says that he saw no point in living anymore. And then literally like a representation of God showed up. I don't think Homeboy was just going to be sad. I feel like he probably was going to off. But I think it's interesting that he has like, there's so many things I want to say about it. Like, it's not only that it's a part of like this greater divine plan, but also that he's a legacy hero who doesn't have any like direct connection to the character that like he's based on. You know what I mean? It's like if somebody took on the Batman mantle, but they didn't have anything to really do with Batman other than they were just inspired. Like, that was it. And then they're like, well, that's enough for me. I guess that's going to be my thing now. And it's like, being Mr. Terrific is his reason for living. That's like, in my opinion, a very deep thing. Because most superheroes don't have to be superheroes and are choosing to be superheroes. And they're the kind of like person to where when they hit like a certain age, they're going to retire. You know, they're going to stop being a superhero. But Mr. Terrific has dedicated his life to being a superhero. He went from feeling like he had nothing to live for to this is the only thing that he has to live for. The legacy of a hero that he didn't even know about prior to like him taking on this new like life path is now his life path. And there's a lot to that. There's a lot of weight to that. This is like the second time I've kind of like felt this way, like tonight, reading the DC Universe Encyclopedia. Vibe had something similar. Vibe, like pre-Flashpoint Vibe, he meets this kid who's never heard of him before. And then the last thing Vibe hears before he dies is that kid being like, you know, thank you for saving me. You're like my favorite superhero. And it's like, oh, my legacy, like, I went from being a nobody after, like, doing all these great achievements to help, like, save the world to saving this one kid and, like, finally, like, being known for something. And I was like, ooh, it hits your feels, right? And I feel like this Mr. Terrific thing, I've only read his introduction. It, in a similar way to me, hits my feels, but it's, like, a different kind of, like, legacy story. But I love that. DC's really good about their legacy characters. And I feel like they do a really good job with their legacy characters. But let's get past their introduction and let's pop into the origin of Mr. Terrific. The Golden Age. Terry Sloan was a child prodigy during the early part of the 20th century who exhibited an enhanced intellect and a photographic memory from a very young age. He graduated from high school when he was only 11 and finished college by 12. Having honed his mind to perfection, he then pursued extreme physical discipline and became an Olympic-level athlete. Having conquered that world as well, he became an entrepreneur, becoming a millionaire in almost no time at all. Having accomplished so much at such a young age, he felt lost and depressed, wondering if there was anything left for him to do in life. He even considered suicide. What? The first Mr. Terrific also has like this crazy backstory. I also think it's really interesting the concept of like peaking early. Because that seems to be a big thing with Terry Sloan. It's not that he has like a tragedy similar to Mr. Terrific where you kind of dedicated yourself to like a person and then that person died and then you're like, what do I do now? It's like he dedicated his life to him being the best like him he could be. And then once he felt like he accomplished everything he could, he's like, I've peaked. There's nothing left. I guess it's over. And that's also just really interesting because that makes me very curious what convinces him to become a superhero. Because now his like origin is like tied into the next Mr. Terrific's origin in a way. They're both like characters who felt like they lost everything and then they finally like climbed like out of the darkness to become heroes, to become like more than themselves. So let's go. I'm vibing with this so far. This seems good. But one night, as he was contemplating ending it all, he saw a young woman named Wanda Wilson jump from a bridge. He saved her life and discovered that her despair came from learning that her younger brother had become a criminal in a local gang run by a mobster named Big Shot. Sloan became a costume vigilante named Mr. Terrific, the defender of fair play, and became known as the true blue champion of all things fair. As Mr. Terrific, he drove Big Shot out of town and cemented his status as local superhero. I don't understand the fair play thing. I don't know what that means. So I feel like they got me, right? Where I was like, ooh, invested. You know, this seems like actually really interesting conceptually and very unique, and I want to see where this goes. And I think him becoming a superhero is fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Like, he essentially saw someone else do what he was gonna do, and then when he saved them, I'm sure in a way that helped him understand like the value of life. But also at the same time, when he learned what drove her to suicide, he, as someone who didn't have a mission, suddenly had something that he could do that he knew would help others. He went from kind of living a somewhat selfish existence, constantly trying to improve himself, to now being someone who's trying to improve his community and the lives of others. He found new purpose in like charity in a way. So that's cool. I just don't get the fair play angle. I kind of thought the fair play thing was going to tie in somehow, but it's just kind of his like tagline, and I couldn't begin to tell you why. I don't know what, is he like, crime is unfair? Like, I don't get it. It just seems, I don't know. Anyways, now a fully fledged costume adventurer, Mr. Terrific joined the Justice Society and the All-Star Squadron during the height of World War II. On his own, he usually fought various street gangs, although he did have an arch-enemy in the form of the supernatural villain, the Spirit King. Not too many years after the end of World War II, Sloan retired from being a superhero and became an English literature professor at Gateway University. Well, he retired. I didn't expect that. So the reason why I said, like, I didn't expect him to retire is, one, he's just kind of old. So I thought it would be a thing where it's like, he fought in, like, World War II with, like, other superheroes and stuff. Well, not necessarily in World War II, but he fought during World War II with other superheroes. So I thought maybe he would just die of old age. Because that makes sense. That can happen, you know. But I also was thinking the whole, like, his life is kind of, like, found new purpose kind of thing. But, I mean, this still fits within his purpose. By becoming a professor and, like, teaching, he still is, like, helping his community. He still has gone beyond himself to now helping others. So that's still cool. You know, he's just helping the world in a different way. That's totally fine. Let's see, Bronze Age. So far, I like it. The only thing that I think is weird is the fair play thing. Because it gets carried on to the next one, too. To the next Mr. Terrific. And I don't know, it almost feels tacked on. Compared to, like, everything else that I understand. From, like, what I've read. Bronze Age. After several years spent in retirement, Terry Sloan returned to the superhero profession and rejoined the Justice Society part-time, although he still maintained his job as a college professor. It was there that found out that his old enemy, the Spirit King, had plans to steal a dangerous device from the campus laboratory. The two old enemies engaged each other one last time in battle, with the Spirit King strangling him to death, all while using his body... all while using the body of the Flash, Jay Garrick, to do his dirty work. The Justice Society of America eventually brought the Spirit King to justice, and Mr. Terrific was memorialized as a great hero of the Golden Age. So, him dying as, like, a superhero, I think, is also, like, a fitting end. It actually is really interesting that he went back to being a hero. It did kind of become his life purpose. You know what I mean? And he's, like, a millionaire. Like, he doesn't need money. He doesn't really need to work a job. So, man, I guess I have a few questions. Who is the Spirit King and what can he do? Is his whole thing that he, like, possesses people? Because I'm also curious, how does Mr. Terrific, who has no powers, deal with someone who just has the power to possess people, let alone the power to possess people who have superpowers? Because that's pretty good. If the Spirit King can possess people, and Mr. Terrific is his arch nemesis, why didn't the Spirit King just possess Mr. Terrific? Mr. Terrific engaged in one last battle against the Spirit King, but he went into that battle against the Flash, because Spirit King was possessing the Flash, which implies that Mr. Terrific was going toe-to-toe with a speedster. I'm now, like, extremely interested in seeing Mr. Terrific fight a supernatural enemy on his own. I'm so used to seeing him fight along with a team, because like I said, I saw him in, like, the Terrifics, and I saw him in Dark Knight's Metal, The Resistance. In both books, he's, like, fighting alongside other people. It wasn't this Mr. Terrific, though, it's the next one. But still, that's really interesting, and I kind of want to see that. They seem, like, so different, like Spirit King and Mr. Terrific. I don't even know how they get, like, in each other's way. You know, if Spirit King is, like, a super villain, like a supernaturally powered villain or whatever, who has the ability to possess beings like the Flash in order to just do his dirty work, and Mr. Terrific, even if he's, like, one of the smartest men in the world, and he's super rich, and he's super fit, it just sounds wild, the idea that that's his arch enemy. That's the guy who he fights. Think about, like, Batman. Batman has a rogues gallery of, like, villains who have different, like, powers and abilities, and some of them are pretty strong. Like, Poison Ivy is, I think, significantly above Batman's pay grade, to be honest, but he fights her, you know, that's the thing. But when you think about Batman villains, you don't think about, like, people like Spirit King. Spirit King, I think, is just, he's kind of another level, it sounds like. I don't know. I don't even know how you fight him. I don't know who he is. I'm just imagining like this ghost that possesses people. I'm like, how do you fight a ghost? But whatever. I think that's interesting. Also, we don't know what dangerous device he was trying to steal from the campus laboratory, but I'm curious about that now. Anyways, post-crisis on Infinite Earths. Similarly to Terry Sloan, young Michael Holt was a genius child prodigy, learning several different skills by the time he was in elementary school, any one skill which would take an average person years to learn. By the time he was in his early 20s, Holt had 14 PhDs and was a self-made billionaire thanks to his company Cyberware, which later became a part of Wayne Industries. On top of that, he was also a gold medal winning Olympic decathlete. He's kind of already showing up is he showing up? Hold on. I was about to say he was showing up the earlier Mr. Terrific. Not really. The earlier Mr. Terrific graduated college by the time he was like 12 and became a millionaire in no time. Now, in terms of like amount of money, this Mr. Terrific became a billionaire in no time, but due to inflation, $1 million during the time of the first Mr. Terrific was a lot of money. It's probably about even in that regard. And then the first Mr. Terrific graduating when he's like 12 versus Holt in his 20s having like 14 PhDs. The number of PhDs probably balances out the age difference. They're probably about the same. Excuse me. If anything, it's like post-crisis, they were like, we could make Mr. Terrific just more impressive, but still probably about the same. Like, we need to make it sound more impressive, I guess. Him being a decathlete is cool. I'm not sure if the first one was a decathlete. I don't remember that. I remember him being an Olympic level athlete, but they're like, this one just went to the Olympics. He just actually he actually is an Olympian. So that's cool. But despite all the riches life offered Michael Holt, he was struck by tragedy on 2 occasions, both of which dealt him a serious blow. Now, already, I'm going to stop right there. I'm curious what they are, because we already know that he loses Paula, his wife, but the introduction didn't tell us about the second loss that he had, so I want to figure out what his second one is. That sounds cool. First, the death of his mentally challenged older brother, Jeffrey, followed by the accidental death of his wife Paula and their unborn child. Oh. Interesting. I'm sorry to hear that he lost his brother Jeffrey. All of his accomplishments seemed to pale in comparison to their loss, and he contemplated suicide. That actually feels really relatable, to be honest. Like, because have you ever experienced loss and felt like it was loss that was avoidable? Like, you feel like if you had been there for someone at the right time, that maybe you could have helped someone escape a fate that ended up being their end, and you think to yourself nothing else you've really ever done has mattered because of the fact that you essentially failed to save someone you love. That is a really deep thing. It's another reading that kind of puts me in my feels again kind of thing. It's that is kind of a dark feeling, you know? It was at his lowest point that Holt was met by the supernatural being known as the Spectre, who told him the life story of Terry Sloan, the original Mr. Terrific. Now inspired by Sloan's life story, he assumed the name Mr. Terrific and began a career as superhero. I'm sorry, what? What? So they wrote superhero in all caps, is it? Oh, he assumed the name Mr. Terrific and began a career as... I don't know why they capitalized superhero. It tricked me for a moment into thinking that he became a superhero named Superhero. And I was very confused. This article is bad about that, having weird spelling mistakes and weird choices and how they write certain things. But whatever, let's continue. At first, Holt's costume was simply ordinary clothing with a leather jacket that initially had Stone's Fair Play emblem on the back, but his costume got more elaborate later on as he adopted a T-shaped mask and a new leather jacket with the original Mr. Terrific slogan written on the sleeves and Terrific written on the back. Armed with his multi-purpose weapons he called T-Spears, and with his own considerable gifts, this new Mr. Terrific joined the modern incarnation of the Justice Society of America and even became its chairman. Okay, so real quick, I want to say, and my girlfriend Beth always disagrees with me on this. I love characters that just wear normal clothes, who don't go for the whole superhero outfit thing. I'm not saying that superhero costumes don't necessarily have their own purpose, but a lot of them don't. A lot of them are just aesthetic, they're not armor, they don't really help you do anything stealthy. In a fight, it makes you kind of stick out like a sore thumb, and normally you have a big logo on your chest that makes you a target. A lot of times superhero outfits are worse than just wearing your normal clothes. You probably would blend in better if you just wore your normal clothes, And seeing his outfit, it's just a leather jacket and some shades, some jeans and a shirt. Just from this image alone that we see right here, I actually really vibe with that look. Not gonna lie. Back in the day, I used to patrol my neighborhood and film vlogs of me patrolling and looking out for crime and reporting crime anonymously to the police and stuff like that. I had a group of people, and we would all go around and patrol in different parts of the city. And I used to wear stuff like that, where you just kind of put on a jacket and some shades, something that's kind of inconspicuous, and you just go around and you just try to help people. So that also is cool. Plus, I he has that little lightning bolt shaved into his haircut or whatever. Him being a member of the Justice Society of America, him being African American, and him wearing normal street clothes kind of reminds me of Jakeem Thunder, who's another DC Comics character who wore normal street clothes, and he's African American, and he's just a superhero going around helping people, who doesn't really have a secret identity. Now I think about it, it's yeah, they're both fairly similar characters. I'm curious if they've ever they were both members of the JSA. Maybe they did interact at some point. That's kind of cool. I don't know. It's got my imagination running a little bit. So far, I'm kind of digging Mr. Terrific. I think it's kind of interesting. And where we at, though? Oh, also, I think it's cool that he was a chairman of the JSA. Based on all his skills, even though he doesn't have any powers, it does sound right. It does sound like something that he'd be capable of doing. It's also interesting because we just read about Hawkman earlier today. I did a video on him, and Hawkman has been a chairman of the JSA. So it's interesting to see all these people who have led the Justice Society of America. After serving for a time as leader of the JSA, he joined the United Nations Security Council intelligence agency, Checkmate, where he initially held the position of White King's Bishop and later White King. Thanks to time travel, Michael Holt got to meet his predecessor in the role, Terry Sloan. He also fought against him when his corpse was briefly reanimated as a member of the Black Lantern Corps. That sounds like an interesting fight, not gonna lie. Because they're so similar, but because a lot of their abilities come from the fact that they're just smart, I just feel that'd be a lot of battle of wits kind of stuff. New 52. After the events of 2011's Flashpoint, reality was altered and some of Michael Holt's history was changed. He was still one of the world's smartest and most accomplished people who suffered tragically after the loss of his wife, after which he started his own company, Holt Industries. He became a superhero and adopted the alias of Mr. Terrific, even though there was no previous Mr. Terrific in this new timeline. Thanks to his company, Holt became of the most prominent tech moguls on Earth. He also started dating Karen Starr, owner of Starr Industries, who was secretly the superheroine Power Girl. Already, I have to say, New 52 Michael Holt feels a little weak. It feels a little weak compared to the other one. I'd say a lot weaker, actually. So in the Hawkman video, I was talking about how like his new 52 iteration is like the best one, and they did like the best job with trying to like deal with like his character and his history and adapt it into like a new form. New 52, Mr. Terrific almost feels like he misses the point. Like, he just kind of becomes a superhero. He kind of almost reminds me of like an Iron Man, almost, in the New 52. Because his loss doesn't seem to be like his his defining moment. You know, he starts a company and then he becomes a superhero. You know, and he loses his legacy. Like, he loses the fact that he's a legacy character. And he loses, like, the divine intervention, the idea that he's a part of, like, some kind of divine plan. I don't know. Like, it's not even that the New 52 one sounds bad. It's just that it sounds, like, watered down. It just sounds like he lost something about him that kind of made him more than just another billionaire superhero. But the New 52 one just sounds like another billionaire superhero. I feel like his legacy is important. I feel like that like divine intervention from the Spectre is important. They like shape him. And without that shaping, it's just like, he's dating Power Girl, but he doesn't know it. You know what I mean? I don't know. Holt soon found out that Karen Starr had been secretly breaking into his company lab and stealing technology in order to create a quantum tunnel, which she was building to get back to the alternate parallel Earth that she called home, after having become trapped on our world. He then followed her through the rift she had created and discovered another world, which is designated as Earth 2. There he had several adventures with the group of heroes collectively known as the Wonders, many of whom were alternate versions of his JSA comrades from his previous reality. Okay, so I think it's interesting that he went to Earth 2 and he kind of ended up becoming an Earth 2 superhero so that you could kind of get him back in his like JSA role. I do think it's interesting that instead of his company being called Cyberware, it's called Holt Industries. I almost dislike that though. Like I kind of prefer Cyberware only because it's less like him focused. It's less like personal branding. But personal branding is like a very modern marketing thing. Like it's not really that bad of a thing. It's fine. I do like the idea that he keeps his company. Because before the New 52, he had the Cyberware company and then he gives it to Wayne Industries or whatever. I like the idea that he has his own company and he's like up there with like LexCorp and with like Star Industries and with like Wayne Industries as one of like the bigger companies in the DC multiverse. That's fine. You know, let him like keep his success. Because Spider-Man was in a similar situation where he had like Parker Industries and then Spider-Man doesn't have Parker Industries anymore. I think Parker Industries didn't go away, it's just that Spider-Man no longer is like over it. And there's no reason for you to have these heroes who have built up this like huge thing that you can potentially tell stories off of or not tell stories off of if you just choose not to. You just don't have to get rid of it, I guess is what I'm thinking. So I'm glad that he got to keep his company in the New 52. That was a cool thing. Him entering a relationship with Power Girl feels weird. It's just Mr. Terrific before was heavily based off his loss. It was the fact that, oh no, I lost this person close to me and I now don't know what to do with my life anymore. And I guess even though it was never stated that he didn't date anyone after that, I kind of liked the concept of like the respect element of it. Like, all respect the time that we had together and like the level of importance I felt you had on my life. Like to the point where he was like, I might want to like end everything because my wife died kind of thing. Well, I guess that's the other thing. You know how a lot of superheroes are like shaped by their tragedy? He was originally shaped by his tragedy. But in this world, his wife dying just seems like something that happened. It's not like because his wife died, now he's a superhero. It's like his wife died, they started a company, and now he's a super... Like, they don't feel consequential. It's just something that occurred in his life, a happenstance thing. But you could see him, regardless of whether his wife died, becoming a superhero. So I don't know. And it doesn't even mention that he, like, after his wife, like, dying or whatever, that he was, like, on any, like, breaking point or any precipice, or that he felt like his life was over or anything like that. It just feels like so much of what makes him Mr. Terrific was just diminished by the New 52. And it does feel like they kind of mishandled his character. Unlike Hawkman in the New 52, or I think he just got better. But whatever. Enough about Hawkman. Rebirth. Let's look at Rebirth continuity. After spending a long time in the universe of Earth 2, Michael Holt would eventually come back home to his own Earth. Not long after he returned, he found out about the rise of the Dark Multiverse from Batman and its threat to the regular multiverse. It's crazy whenever I, like, end a sentence on, like, a music change. Okay. He soon joined the Dark Knight and other heroes to fight off the incursion of the Dark Multiverse, re-establishing himself once more as a superhero in his home dimension. Not long after his journey into the Dark Multiverse, Holt found out that his company had been bought out by greedy industrial billionaire Simon Stagg, which didn't exactly make him happy. Upon returning to his old company's building, now fully owned and operated by Stagg Enterprises, he discovered that Stagg had been performing experiments on Metamorpho, the Element Man, and forcing him to transform himself into the mysterious Nth Metal. This opened a portal to the Dark Multiverse, where Mr. Terrific, along with Metamorpho and the hero Plastic Man, were transported to. Together with the heroine Phantom Girl, the four heroes take the name The Terrifics and begin to explore the Dark Multiverse together. I need to get back to reading The Terrifics. That just sounds cool. I guess it's been so long since I read The Terrifics, because it's been like 3 years now, since like 2017 when like Dark Knight's Metal happened. I just need to hit up The Terrifics. Metamorpho being able to turn into Nth Metal is really cool and also incredibly overpowered. So I want to see that. And then them exploring the Dark Multiverse. The Dark Multiverse is just cool. You're telling me there's a book where superheroes are just traveling the Dark Multiverse? That's awesome. Anyways, powers and abilities. Both men called Mr. Terrific were exceptional human beings who both accomplished the principle of what mankind can achieve without having any sort of metagene. Sloan was a master martial artist and an Olympic-level athlete with a genius-level intellect. He also possessed a photographic memory. Michael Holt surpassed Terry Sloan, as he has been deemed the third smartest man on Earth behind Batman and Lex Luthor. Holt has the ability to pick up complex skills quickly, and much like his predecessor, he also has a photographic memory. He's an expert in multiple fields of medicine, engineering, and science, and possesses 14 PhDs, 2 of which are in engineering and physics. When fighting as Mr. Terrific, Michael Holt is aided by his invention he calls T-Spheres, floating robotic orbs which create holographic projections. He can project laser grids and can connect with any and all other electronic devices. Responding to his mental and vocal commands, these spheres allow him to fly, as well as function as weapons which can project electrical and force blast onto his opponents. So I was curious what his T-Spheres did. So they can create holograms, which is interesting, project laser grids, which I guess is good for like creating like a security field. He could trap an enemy, actually. He could roll up on a supervillain and like immediately in the fight, he could be like, and now you're surrounded by lasers. You're surrounded like 3-dimensionally by lasers. You try to escape. You'll probably get hit by a laser. I've called the authorities using my T-spheres. You've just been beat. I can think of multiple characters who, if they were just surrounded by lasers, like, what do you do now? What do you? How are you gonna get out of this one? Poison ivy is laser. Got him. You know, is that kind of thing. I like that he can control them with his mind. The ability to shoot electrical and force blast or whatever. Sure. I mean, that's what you'd expect. They're essentially just drones, by the way. His power is that he has drone. Well, it's not a power, but his like big thing is that he just has drones. That's cool. Like, Mr. Terrific in many ways feels like fairly realistic. Because he's even more grounded than Batman, I would say, to be honest. Because Batman is like not only smarter than him, but Batman can like bench press like 1,000 pounds or whatever. And Batman's like literally traveled the entire world and learned every form of martial arts and blah, blah, blah. Like, Mr. Terrific sounds more grounded than Batman. And even his like persona as Mr. Terrific is more of like a realistic kind of thing. Like, he's not like, I'm Batman. He's like, I'm just a vigilante. I don't have some kind of like crazy theme or anything. I just want to help people. Sure. Why not? Also, New 52 Mr. Terrific still has fair play on his jacket. What does that mean? Fair play didn't have a lot of meaning pre-Flashpoint. Post-Flashpoint, I think it means nothing. I just don't know why that's something that stuck with his character. If anything in the New 52, like, for them to, like, get rid of, if they had gotten rid of the fair play thing, I wouldn't have cared. That sounds fine. Doesn't really seem necessary for his character. Also, we got a few more things with Mr. Terrific that we can look at. Through the nanotechnology in his mask, Holt is invisible to all forms of electronic detection, and through the advanced tech embedded into it, he can change instantaneously into costume and back. Okay, real quick, I just want to say, the nanotech in his mask cloaking him from like electronic devices like cameras and stuff, that's cool. I like that. There's nothing wrong with that part. That makes sense. Him being like, and I can instantly go in and out of my costume. That's where I'm like, well, that's just stupid. Because Mr. Terrific's costume doesn't do anything. Like, does he have a secret identity? Is Michael Holt not, like, publicly a superhero? I guess it's fine for him to not be publicly a superhero. He could be, though. Very similarly to Iron Man, I don't think it would hurt him to be a superhero publicly. That, like, anybody could do it and it would be fine. But I don't see what the point of him being able to change in and out of his costume is. That seems kind of lame. Okay. He's one of the very few superheroes that is a practicing medical doctor, and he speaks several different languages, only a few of which have been revealed thus far. Okay. Cool. I like it. Excuse me. His favorite ability out of like the list of things. Well, it's weird to say his favorite ability. Like, my favorite thing that his T-spheres can do will have to be like connecting to any and all other electronic devices, because that makes it seem like he could also interface with like alien devices. Like, as long as it's electronic, his T-spheres can like communicate with it, and he can maybe like hack stuff through his T-spheres. I don't really know if he can do that. When it says connect, it makes it seem like he can hack using the T-spheres, but who knows? And the laser grid, I just feel like in a lot of situations, forming a laser grid around someone is kind of game. And if it's not game, you can keep doing it. Like, if you put like a laser grid around someone and they're like, well, I'm durable enough to be able to survive like running out of the grid and just racing towards you, I could be like, Well, I'm just gonna put grids everywhere between you and me. I'm gonna fly away on my drones, and if you follow me, I'm just gonna keep putting up these grids. Like, maybe whatever defenses you have are able to handle running through the lasers really quickly, like once. I just have more lasers. I just keep making grids. Deal with it. Just deal with these grids. It just seems like a really solid, like, restraint tool, defensive tool, and offensive tool. Laser grids just seem good. And it's one of those, like, lethal gadgets that still can be used in, like, a non-lethal way. Like, it's not like you make a laser grid and then you have the laser grid, like, fly at your opponent. It's not that you're using it to make, like, laser constructs to, like, fly into and, like, cut through people or anything. It's just you're like, surrender now. You're literally surrounded by lasers. And if you move, you know, lasers can, like, burn you or maybe even, like, cut you to pieces or whatever if you're not careful. It allows you to have, like, a legitimate threat to your villain without being, like, a murderer. Like, if they do fall into the grid, it's because they didn't, like, heed your warning to be like, stop, you're surrounded by lasers, give up. You know? Like, I think it's a smart idea. Essential storylines and history. Who is Mr. Terrific? Sensation Comics #1, January 1942. In the very same issue which was Wonder Woman's solo series debut, the original Mr. Terrific first appeared. In this backup story, we learn how Terry Sloan was a man who had accomplished everything in life, but when he saved a young woman and her younger brother and drove out a local crime lord from his neighborhood, he found a new calling as a costumed mystery man. It's really interesting to see the original Mr. Terrific. Honestly didn't know what he looked like. So, that's news to me. The Haunting of Jim Corrigan, Atonement. The Spectre, #54, 1997. Long after the death of the original Mr. Terrific, a new hero who bears his name emerged. Genius Michael Holt is introduced in this story, contemplating taking his own life after the accidental death of his wife and unborn child. But when Holt is confronted by the spirit of vengeance known as the Spectre, he shares with him the story of Terry Sloan, the Golden Age Mr. Terrific, and inspires Holt to follow in his footsteps. Thunderstruck, JSA #27, 2001. By the way, love that cover. Oh my gosh. The cover of this, like, JSA issue, I am a sucker for photorealistic art. I love it when you can, like, have light shine off of a character, like, realistically, and you get that, like, nice glow on a character that makes it look like Flash on photograph. Alex Ross is, like, one of my favorite artists. I don't think this is, like, an Alex Ross cover, because I don't see, like, Alex Ross's name anywhere on the cover. But whoever did that, good work. Love that cover. Really good cover. Anyways, Thunderstruck, JSA #27, 2001. After joining the Justice Society of America, Michael Holt reluctantly took on the role of leader when Hawkman was forced to step down after JSA member Sand confronted the Winged Wonder about his leadership duties. Oh, I remember that from the Hawkman thing. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. When the team decides who will be their new leader by putting up a vote, Mr. Terrific wins hands down. Although he is shocked at learning he is the new chairman, he fills his role until after the events of 2005's Infinite Crisis. Software update, Mr. Terrific #1, November 2011. Oh, interesting. I just realized that Mr. Terrific didn't have his own series until the New 52. All the previous stuff, he was, like, appearing in, like, Sensation Comics. Then he makes his first appearance in the Spectre. Then he's a member of, like, the Justice Society of America or whatever. And now he has his own book. So as soon as he got his own book, it seems like he lost a lot of his character. That's really sad, actually. Not gonna lie. Following the events of 2011's Flashpoint, in which much of DC history was reimagined, he is reintroduced. We are introduced to Michael Holt as a fully formed superhero as he fights with Miles Dalton of Dalton Technologies in the UK, who is using stolen armor. We learn of Mr. Terrific's origin in the new universe, where he is stopped from committing suicide not from the Spectre, but by his own adult son, time traveling from the future, inspiring him to become Mr. Terrific. They didn't mention that earlier. Okay, so it's a similar thing, where he's like almost pushed to suicide, but then, someone should... That's weird. Okay, so Mr. Terrific originally was a legacy character, and the idea that he is like... They gave him the time loop. They need to stop giving characters the time loop. So, hold on. This is actually a really common thing in DC. It's like a way for them to set up a legacy character, but they are their own legacy. Woo! Like, this actually isn't special. So, Superman is like this. Superman gets the idea to become Superman from the Legion of Superheroes, which is a group of superheroes from the future who were inspired to become superheroes by Superman. So Superman's legacy makes them become superheroes. So then they travel back in time to meet the person who inspired them, but they inadvertently start the time loop of legacy. The Flash was hit by a lightning bolt that gave him his super speed abilities, but the lightning bolt that hit the Flash was actually the Flash traveling through time back to the day where he got his powers. Oh, I'm my own origin, so it just keeps looping. And now it's a similar thing. Also, Booster Gold is like that, but Booster Gold is even closer to Mr. Terrific because it's a similar thing where it's like, it's my son who time traveled and essentially convinces me to become a superhero in a way. It's really weird. With Booster Gold, it's different. It's like his mentor is his son from the future. So his skill origin is weird. Like the way that he learns to be as good of a hero as he is because his son, who he inevitably teaches all these techniques, goes back in time and then teaches him those techniques. So those techniques have no real origin in time. Whatever. It's a time loop thing. He just has the Booster Gold, Superman, Flash, time loop legacy syndrome that a lot of DC characters have. But at least there's weight to his suicide thing. I'm glad that they didn't completely wreck his character in the New 52. He does feel way more like Iron Man now. Significantly like Iron Man. He has Holt Industries, which is his billion-dollar company, and he faces off against a villain from another technology company who stole armor? Stole armor. That's Iron Man's whole thing. He's always dealing with Hammer stealing his armor and shit. Why is he Iron Man now? Why was that the direction to take him? He doesn't have to be Iron Man. But whatever. It's weird. But let's continue through. I might read that Mr. Terrific run. It sounds interesting. And plus it's the only relevant Mr. Terrific solo series that I'm aware of. I think they might have done a modern Mr. Terrific #1 as well. I think there's a Rebirth Mr. Terrific series, but I guess it's not a key storyline or whatever. Meet the Terrifics. Terrifics #1, 2018. After spending time in the parallel world of Earth 2, Mr. Terrific came back to his home dimension to help with the battle against the denizens of the Dark Multiverse. Not long after, a beacon from one of Mr. Terrific's T-spheres alerts him to industrialist Simon Stagg and his plans to open a portal to the Dark Multiverse in what used to be Mr. Terrific's company's HQ. He's pulled into Stagg's portal along with Plastic Man and Metamorpho, and along with Phantom Girl find themselves stuck in the Dark Multiverse. There, they receive a message from Tom Strong, informing them that they must band together to save the universe, and the Terrifics are born. You know, in hindsight, it's really weird that, like, Mr. Terrific in the New 52 is just like a placeholder for a bunch of other characters. So it sounds like New 52 Mr. Terrific is like DC's Iron Man, and then DC Rebirth's Mr. Terrific is like DC's Mr. Fantastic, who like leads this like team that has like a stretchy guy and an invisible girl and a rock man, and he's the genius leader. You know, like the Fantastic Four. Like, I don't know why he's become like our, well, we want to just use a Marvel character, so it's just going to be Mr. Terrific. He can be whatever Marvel character we want him to be in our stories. But I don't know. I remember enjoying the Terrifics to a point. The Tom Strong stuff, I remember, became like a bigger thing in the Terrifics. And I thought Tom Strong was interesting. But for whatever reason, I fell off the book at a certain point. Metamorpho, at a certain point in the Terrifics, loses his powers. I thought that was weird. There are little things like that that made me feel like a little bit weirder about the book. But I'm interested in learning more about Mr. Terrific Most Def, and maybe checking out like his New 52 to Rebirth like timeline. He's still a relevant character, which is why I'm interested. Like I said, I recently read the Phantom Stranger run of the New 52, and I was gonna read Trinity of Sin. I read the first issue, but the issue about like reading some DC characters is that you may think they're really interesting, but if they just stop being relevant, then it feels almost like it's for naught. Like, my favorite DC character is like Red Tornado, and they don't do anything with Red Tornado now. So it's like, I have all this Red Tornado knowledge, I've read every Red Tornado run, but who cares? You know what I mean? At least with Mr. Terrific, he seems like a really interesting character, and I like a lot of the lore behind him, and I feel like he's like a great legacy character. Like, he sounds really cool. And they're still telling stories about him, and he still seems fairly relevant, so I'll probably check him out. I'll probably read his stuff. Team affiliations. He's been a member of the Justice Society of America, the All-Star Squadron, the Justice League, Checkmate, the Terrifics, and the Black Lantern Corps. Appearances in other media. He was a main character in Justice League vs. the Fatal Five. In television, he's appeared in The Arrow as Curtis Holt, which is weird that they like changed his name so significantly, but whatever. And he's made guest appearances / cameos in the Legends of Tomorrow live action show, again as Curtis Holt. In animation, he's appeared in Justice League Unlimited, Batman the Brave and the Bold, Beware the Batman as Michael Holt. Ooh, I'm curious what his Beware the Batman crossover was like. In Justice League Action, and in Freedom Fighters, The Ray as Curtis Holt. Because the Freedom Fighters The Ray is like an animated series that exists in the CW, so that makes sense. Video games, Injustice Gods Among Us, and Lego DC Supervillains. So those are his video game appearances. But anyways, I'd like to thank you guys for watching. What do you guys think of Mr. Terrific? I mean, I honestly think after this that I'm going to start reading Mr. Terrific comics. You know, it's not like for each one of these like character entries that I read over, I go, I guess I'm gonna actually check this character out. But after reading this stuff, I mean, it sounds interesting enough. And to be honest, I like Iron Man. Like, like even if New 52 Mr. Terrific is just like DC Iron Man, I like Iron Man and I like DC. So that's not even like a huge problem. You know, like that's probably fine. But anyways, thank you all for watching. If you guys like this video, make sure to smash that like button, favorite, comment, subscribe, and ding ding ding, ring the notification bell to be notified whenever we do these videos. This is your host, your friend, your boy, Jet Black the One and Only, logging out. Peace guys, and stay tuned for more content. Chickadee. Oh, and make sure you check out my video, These Superheroes Do Not Exist. It's about a project that I'm working on with John Mason. Peace.